see. Okay, there we are. Well, let's once again turn to Genesis 45. And I promise we'll get out of 45 this week. All right, and I'll read actually the whole chapter. Some of it's review, and it's good to get it all together. Joseph could not contain himself before all those who stood before him, and he cried, "Have everyone go out from me." So there was no man with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. He wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Please come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land for 2 years, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me here before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth, and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. Now therefore, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all his household, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, and do not delay. You shall live in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, and your children, and your children's children, and your flocks, and your herds, and all that you have. There I will also provide for you, for there are still 5 years of famine to come. And you and your household and all that you have would be impoverished. Behold, your eyes see, the eyes of my brother. The eyes of my brother Benjamin see that that is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. And Benjamin wept on his neck, and Joel wept in front of you. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them. And afterwards his brothers talked with him. Now when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house and that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your beasts and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household and come to the land of Egypt, and you will eat the fat of the land. Now you are ordered, do this, take wagons from the land of Egypt for your little ones and for your wives, and bring your father and come. Do not concern yourselves with the goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours." Then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the commands of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. To his father he sent as follows: 10 donkeys loaded with the best things of Egypt, and 10 female donkeys loaded with grain and bread and sustenance for his father on the journey. So he sent his brothers away, and as they departed he said to them, "Do not quarrel on the journey." Then they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, saying, "Joseph is Joseph. Joseph? Joseph? All right, pregnant pause here. We seem to be out of battery. right. That sounds better. Joseph. Okay. Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over all the land of Egypt. But Jacob was stunned, for he did not believe them when they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them. And when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. Then Israel said, "It is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go up and see him before I die." All right, let's pause in prayer. Father, we ask that you would give us the wisdom and knowledge we need. These are your words, and in them we see forgiveness. We see your divine plan and your protecting of your chosen people and the deliverance from famine. And I just pray that you would help us to understand these things, give us that which we lack. And I pray these things in your name. Amen. All right. We left off last week, I think it was around verse 10. But anyways, so let's go there. So he has finished revealing himself to his brothers. He has said, "Don't concern yourself with the memory of what you did to me. God meant it for good, even though what you did was not for my good." So 9 through 12, we've got Joseph saying to his brothers, "Go tell my dad, and you guys need to move everything down here so that you can live with me. You'll live in Goshen," verse 10, "with all your belongings and all your kids." And then verse 11, "I will provide for you because there's still 5 more years of famine. So if you don't do this, you'll be impoverished." And then verse 12, and I guess it would be 13 too. So I have, 12 and 13, "Behold, your eyes see, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see, that it is my mouth which is speaking to you. Now you must tell my father of all my splendor in Egypt, and all that you have seen, and you must hurry and bring my father down here." And so they've seen their brother before, right? They've been to Egypt 2 times now. They ate with him, but now they can truly see that it's their brother Joseph, right? He has revealed it to them, and he's asking them to see. He's saying, "Please look at me, see that it's me. And then tell your father about all that you've seen here." Again, back in verse 10, this idea of "you shall live in Goshen and be near me." Goshen was a part of the land of Egypt that it was actually a pretty rich land. It was pretty lush, but it was not desirable from the Egyptians because it flooded on a regular basis. And so great for people who lived in tents, who could move as the floods come and then could move back when the floods were gone, and great for the grazing of cattle and sheep. So, all right. Then verse 14 and the first part of 15, "Then they fell on his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brothers and wept on them." And again, I would think that if I think about this dispassionately, this would have been further proof to each of the brothers that this was their brother Joseph, right? He would have called each by his name. During this time, he would have reminded them of the things that only they probably would have remembered with him as memories from childhood. So again, I think this would have served the purpose of not only reconciliation of building that rapport, but also of further confirmation that it really is Joseph. And afterwards, his brothers talked with him, 15b. So again, They talked with him as their brother, not as Pharaoh's right-hand man, not as the leader of Egypt, but just their brother. And then 16, we have this idea of, now when the news was heard in Pharaoh's house that Joseph's brothers had come, it pleased Pharaoh and his servants. And so, if we go back to verse 2, Joseph weeps so loudly that the Egyptians heard of it, and the household of Pharaoh heard of it. So 16 and 2 kind of go together, right? So, and here we see that it actually pleases Pharaoh. Obviously, there would have been a lot of comings and goings among the servants. There could have been some intrigue, some interest in what's going on. There might have also been some concern. Man, Joseph's cracking. What are we going to do? The plan is Joseph's. It's going to fail without him. But now they know what's going on, and it pleases them that the resolution of this is a happy thing, not a sad thing. That there's reconciliation among the brothers. And also, I think there's probably some relief because if the concern was Joseph was cracking, now they know he's not. And again, there's some thought. There's definite historical evidence that the pharaohs of Egypt for a time were not Egyptian. They were actually from people from the north, people that would have been more akin to the Canaanites and to the Israelites, Midianites, Ishmaelites. And so it's possible that part of this idea of it pleasing the court is these would be foreign allies that would have been more akin to them, if that's who was Pharaoh at this time. Now, we don't really know. At some point, that Pharaoh gets deposed by actual Egyptians. And there are those who think the timeline of that makes sense, that if the Pharaoh was of the north here, he would have been more likely to like Joseph and like Joseph's family. And then when in Exodus we read, and then there came a Pharaoh who did not know of Joseph. Well, that may have been an Egyptian that took over the throne. So again, I'm not going to say that's for sure. That's just speculation. Whether it's because of time or because of, we see it in our nation, right? With every president, with every change of Congress, there seems to be a big change in direction, a big change in what's true, what's believable, what we should do. And this was a political thing, right? What should we do about Joseph? What should we do about the Israelites? And so, not to lessen the fact that they are God's chosen people, but from a political standpoint, from the Egyptians' point of view, that's going on. But right now, Pharaoh's pleased. Okay, verse 17 to 18. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Say to your brothers, do this, load your beast and go to the land of Canaan, and take your father and your households and come to me, and I will give you the best of the land of Egypt, and you'll eat the fat of the land." So what I don't know here is, did Pharaoh learn of what Joseph told his brothers, or was this just God working in Pharaoh's heart to basically say and command that the brothers do the same thing Joseph just asked his brothers to do? I think it's the latter. I think somehow Pharaoh came to the same decision that Joseph came to. And I think it was also politically expedient, right? This family of Joseph, man, they're distracting my right-hand man. We need to remove this distraction. If we bring them here, he'll be able to do his job. But one way or another, he has the same command. Because we see that in verse 19, right? Now you are ordered. It wasn't a request. Pharaoh is saying, I want you to do this. I'm telling you to do this. And not only that, to take wagons from the land of Egypt, for the little ones, for your wives, and bring your father and come. And then further he says, do not concern yourselves with your goods, for the best of all the land of Egypt is yours. So quite a thing to come from the ruler of the land, right? That just go get the people, don't worry about food, don't worry about lodging, don't worry about clothes, because we'll provide everything. It'll be a 5-star stay without an end date. So obviously he added the order of the wagons. That's not something Joseph had offered, and made it clear to them that they don't need to bring anything. So 21, 22, then the sons of Israel did so, and Joseph gave them wagons according to the command of Pharaoh, and gave them provisions for the journey. To each of them he gave changes of garments, but to Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of garments. And again, I see that as significant. Obviously, again, he is favoring Benjamin. He gave Benjamin 5 times the amount of food at the feast, and here he's giving him 5 times the amount of garments. And then I think the 300 pieces of silver is significant, just because that would be, initially he was going to imprison all 10 brothers, right? The cost of each of them from a purpose of a slave would be 30 gold pieces. Now Joseph was sold for 20 to the Midianites, Ishmaelites, but they would have sold him for the going rate, which throughout all of the Old Testament is 30 pieces of silver. So they would have likely collected that amount when they got to Egypt. And so, again, it could just be that he just randomly came to 300 pieces of silver, but I think it's intentional. Take that for what it's worth. And then verse 23, I'm trying to think through how this would have been received by both the brothers and by Jacob. Because remember, what did Jacob do when he sent his brothers back? He's like, well, take all the money that you were given back, because that was a mistake. You need to pay more this time. And take the best of the land of Canaan, right? A couple nuts. I mean, we don't know how much it was. A little bit of oil, a couple nuts and whatever. And here we've got Joseph loading up 10 donkeys with the best things of Egypt. I mean, no matter what, no matter how much the brothers had brought, this was way more, possibly 10 times as much, or even a factor greater than that, to say, the best that you can show me from the land of Canaan, I have way better here. It's better here. Come here. Now, again, I don't think that was bragging rights on Joseph's part. I think it was to add to this testimony to make it more credible that the story that the brothers were going to bring to their dad was real and that it was believable. And then we get to 24. So he sent his brothers on the way, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the way. Now, why would they quarrel? I mean, and I think largely, I think it's going to be, why would they quarrel, right? There's going to be a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming, right? Judah, this was your fault. Reuben, why didn't you stop us? I mean, there could have been all kinds of things. Further, it could have divided them amongst who was going to tell Jacob. And how was that going to come across? Because I can see some of them saying, you know what? Yeah, I didn't stop you, but I never participated. And hey, Dad, it was their fault, right? So it's not only quarreling on the way, but I think it's also be unified and be reconciled to your dad, you know. All is well. And what we don't know, there seems to be, I mean, throughout this narrative we've seen and we've remarked on that the 10 brothers don't seem put out, at least on the paper, that their dad favors Benjamin, right? And they don't seem overly put out with each other. So, but it's possible that there was still animosity among the brothers. And so maybe Joseph was just remembering the past, or maybe it still is present. But he's saying there's no reason for us to be at odds with each other. Go get my dad, bring your families, and you'll have food, and you'll have good things here in Egypt. All right, 25, 26. So they went up from Egypt and came to the land of Canaan to their father Jacob. And they told him, saying, Joseph is still alive, and indeed he is ruler over the land of Egypt. But he was stunned, for he did not believe them. I mean, I can totally see that. How can this be? I mean, why wouldn't he ask that question? It can't. You know, his world had changed the day that he found out Joseph was dead, according to the 10 brothers, right? He saw the garment that was dipped in blood and torn. And this is a fantastic story, but it's not the story he has believed in for the last 32 years. Or 17 years, no. Joseph was 30 when he stood before, 22 years, sorry. I didn't write it here, so I'd have to turn back through my pages and find it. 22 years. So the last 22 years he has believed his son Joseph is dead. And then 27, when they told him all the words of Joseph that he had spoken to them, and when he saw the wagons that Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of their father revived. And so all those testimonials were required. There's a lot in that statement, right? One word, revived. You know, I can imagine, I mean, the guy's 130 years old. Did the years fall off of him a little bit? Did he have a little pep in his step? I don't know. I'm thinking so. Did the future look a little bit brighter? Did he have something to look forward to? Not something to, I mean, he's, at least in some way, he's been grieving all of this time. And I think some of that is normal. The fact that Joseph was favored adds to it, of course. But if you talk to any parent who has lost a child, it is something that just stays with them forever. Yes, the grief becomes a little bit less, but it still is. All of those hopes you had for your child are gone because the child is dead. And now that who Jacob believed was dead is now alive. And then 28, then Israel said, "It is enough, my son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." So, I mean, he knows he's an old man. I don't think there's no fatalism here, but it is, I think he had planned to live his life in Canaan and not ever move again, and now he knows that he must. Not only that, there would be the testimony of, Dad, if you stay here, you're going to starve. Don't you want to come and have food? All right. Anything I missed that you guys want to capture in this chapter? Questions, thoughts, comments? All right. Well, I promised we'd get through 45, and look at that. We got 10 minutes. All right, let's go into 46. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. There's a lot in this one verse. Beersheba, I don't know if you would remember this, but Beersheba was where Isaac finalized his covenant with Abimelech after a quarrel over wells. And on the day after the feasting, and Abimelech and his servants and an army leaves, Isaac's servants found water, and this name was named Beersheba because of the water. So God had provided water to Isaac and his family. Jacob, I would think, would remember this place because he was there as a youth, and it was in a time of famine. So, and I think there's probably some thanksgiving on his part because Jacob recognizes God is providing food and water in time of a great famine for him and his family, just like he had for Isaac. Now, it's also, I think, important to think about Jacob's life here, right? Jacob, when he flees his mom and his dad after stealing the birthright, or not stealing the birthright, but getting the blessing by trickery. He sleeps on the stones, and he has the vision of the stairway going to heaven and the angels coming up and down. And he wakes up in the morning and says, well, if you keep your promises to me, God, I might believe, essentially, right? Not a lot of worship going on there. He did build an altar there, and he did pour oil on it, but it was more of a prove it type of worship, not a I trust you, Lord. Then on his way back into Canaan, he fights with God, right? At the river Jabbok. And we see him starting to trust in the Lord, but the trust is not complete. And here we just see him, from that time on, he builds altar after altar after altar. And so this is just a continuation that he is still trusting in the Lord. But there is, at this time as he's traveling, there's no question he is trusting in the Lord. All right, verses 2-4. God spoke to Israel in visions in the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. And he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation here, or there. I will go down with you to Egypt, and I will also surely bring you up again. And Joseph will close your eyes. So, a few things here. There may have been some trepidation in Jacob's mind, because back to Isaac, in the time of famine, do you remember what God told Isaac? Don't go to Egypt. So I don't know if Jacob had any, and you can find that back in chapter 26. To Isaac, God says, do not go to Egypt. And he actually says, go ahead and go to the land of what becomes the Philistines, the kingdom of Abimelech. And that's where they spent their time when Jacob was a kid. But God here confirms that Egypt is the place to go. Again, he confirms that promise that you will be a great nation. And not only that, he also has God's confirmation here, right? That Joseph is alive. You will see him. So if Jacob still had if he was harboring any doubts, thinking, my sons are trying to pull one over on me, I don't know why. Now there's no doubt, right? Joseph is alive, and I will see him. All right. Then verse 5, then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives in the wagons, which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. So now they're all in for sure, and here we can see that they're, verses 6 and 7. They took their livestock and their property, which they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and came to Egypt. Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his grandsons with him, his daughters, his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. So we see prominence here on the people, right? But we also see in verse 6, they took all their property, everything they had. And so they're all in. They left nothing in Canaan, and they're relying on And at this point, because of verses 1 through 4, are they relying on Joseph to provide? Are they relying on Pharaoh? Or they are relying on God? Or is it a mixture of those things? But I would say it's fair to say that they are relying on God. God has made it clear this is the place to go. He is still going to keep his promises, and that they are free to go to Egypt. All right. Then we have a genealogy here. I'll read it real quick. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. Reuben, Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben, Hanok and Palu and Hezron and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin and Ohad and Jachin and Zohar and Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath and Merari. The sons of Judah, Ur and Onan and Shelah and Perez and Zerah. But Ur and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hymnal. The sons of Issachar, Tola and Puvah and Eob and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered and Elon and Jalil. These are the sons of Leah, who she bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram with his daughter Dinah. All his sons and his daughters numbered 33. The sons of Gad, Ziphion and Haggi, Shuni and Esban, Eri and Arodi and Areli. If I pronounce those right, there might have been a lot of confusion in that name, in that family. The sons of Asher, Imnah and Ishva and Ishvi and Beriah and their sister Sarah, and the sons of Beriah, Heber and Malchiel. These are the sons of Zilpah, who Laban gave to his daughter Leah, and she bore Jacob these 16 persons. The sons of Jacob's wife, Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. Now to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin, Bela and Becher and Ashbel, Gera and Naaman, Ehi and Rosh, Mupim and Hupim and Ard. And just on the side, I got to that point, I kind of did a double take, because I recognize that Benjamin's like 30 years old now, right? Ish. Or he would have been older than 30. But he had a lot of sons. He had a big family. But it doesn't read like, it sort of reads like Jacob is still protecting his little son. His little son that has a big family. Anyway, these are the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan, Husham. The sons of Naphtali, Jazeel and Guni and Jezer and Shillim. These are the sons of Bilhah, who Laban gave to his daughter Rachel, and she bore these to Jacob. They were 7 persons in all. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. So to get from 66 to 70, you would take the 3, Joseph, his 2 sons, and Jacob, and you get to 70. And just from a number perspective, you can see the author here doing something with the numbers, right? So 66, incidentally, Leah's family was 33. That's half of the 66. But 66 is an incomplete number, right? It's, the number 6 is what? Falls short of 7. 7 is a perfect number. 6 is man's number. 66 would be twice that. But then with the family reunited, we get to 70. 10 is a complete number, and 7 is also a perfect number. And so even in the numbers, God had brought this into such an alignment that we see the family, not only just by what's happening, but in the numbers themselves, that the family is whole. it's complete, it's reunited. And we'll stop there. We'll pick up on verse 28 next week. So, any thoughts before I close in prayer? All right. Jesus, thank you for what we see here in Jacob's life, the trajectory he took, and the faith we see growing in him, and the promises that you made and kept. Lord, thank you that you are a God who keeps your promises, every single one. And Lord, that we can identify with a person like Jacob who had many flaws, and yet, in spite of all those, still persevered. You persevered with him, and through that he had faith, and he believed in you, and he trusted in you in his last days. Lord, I just thank you for the story of reconciliation and how we can see how you move through the sinful acts of people to bring about your purpose. Lord, I just pray that as we continue our worship in this next hour, that you would bless us and that you would grant that it might be favorable and pleasing in your sight. And I pray these things in your holy and precious name. Amen.